If you've jumped straight into this part of the lesson, open the catch-up file beethoven7.sib, found in the Lesson 2 folder in your Core Resources folder. Between the ribbon and the score is the Document tab bar. At the right-hand side of the Document tab bar is a plus button, and if you click on this, you will see a list of the 4 instruments in this score. Each one is a link to that instrument's part, and clicking on it will open that part in its own tab. Choose the Violin 1 part and have a look at it. You can easily jump back to the score by clicking its tab. The shortcut W also lets you jump between the score and any selected part. Open all 4 parts and see how they look. Sibelius has done some cool things. The part's name appears in the top left corner, in addition to the title and composer text that you added to the full score. The 4 bars that the violin doesn't play at the start have been combined to create one multi-rest instead of 4 separate bars of rest. Because it doesn't need to take into account the other 3 instruments that were in the score, the music has been respaced. Bar numbers have been calculated at the start of each system. At the bottom of the page, Sibelius has added the letters VS for Volti Subito. This translates roughly to turn the page quickly, an indication that Sibelius wasn't able to find an appropriate place for the player to turn the page. The page colour is subtly different. The cream colour serves as a reminder that you're looking not at the score, but at a part. Parts are incredibly easy to work with in Sibelius, but it's important to understand how they work when you start making changes to them. Normally, you won't do this until you've finished working on the score, and that's a good idea because then Sibelius has complete control over formatting and will get it right the great majority of the time. The first thing you need to understand is that the position of any element in the part is offset to the score. This is explained in great detail in the book, but essentially it works like this. If I move this dynamic in the score, it is also moved in the part. If I move it in the part, and then go back to the score, it hasn't moved. If I go back to the part, I will see that if I move it far from its original position in the score, a red dotted line appears, and this warns me that I now have this dynamic in a very different position to the score, and therefore it's probably a mistake. This behaviour might seem a little confusing, but in fact it's ingenious. Many instruments in orchestras, bands and jazz ensembles transpose. For instruments like the bass clarinet, or tenor saxophone, or even French horn, the transposition involves the notes moving quite a long way. Thanks to Sibelius's magnetic layout, if notes in the part are a lot higher than they were in the score due to transposition, other elements, for example phrasing and technique text, will jump out of the way. Sibelius will fix collisions in your score in the most logical way the majority of the time, but occasionally circumstances will require you to move, say, some text marking a beat earlier in the part. If moving it in the part also moved it in the score, you would then have the text in an incorrect position in the score, and you'd have to choose one or the other, a marking that's correct in the score or one that's correct in the part, and obviously this is not an acceptable way of working. Sibelius solves this problem by making any movement in the part an offset of the score position. So, if you move something in the score, it moves in the part. Move it in the part, however, and Sibelius turns it orange to tell you that it's offset. This way, you're unlikely to make any mistakes when formatting your parts. The red dotted line in the part may remind you of other lines you've noticed when you drag objects in a Sibelius score. Go back to the score and click on a dynamic. You may need to zoom in quite a way to see the grey dotted line which shows you which part the dynamic is attached to. If it should be a different staff, you can just drag the dynamic onto that staff and this changes its attachment. When you complete your score, watch out for dynamics that have the wrong attachment. A dynamic over the top of music in an instrumental part is a typical sign of this mistake.